Right, so the culture that I chose to do my final report over is that of Peru. I chose it just because I have recently traveled there and I do have a passion for the Spanish speaking community, and I thought that it would be super easy for me to tie my recent experiences in with my research, and those can cross validate each other. So I thought that would be a really good choice for me to pick for this. But some of the things that I really want to focus on is the gender roles in the Peruvian society. um, they're kind of similar to that here in the Midwest. We have usually in like rural communities, like farming families, for example. The men will go out and work really hard all day. The women will make their breakfast for them in the morning. When they come in for lunch, they'll have their food for them. They'll have dinner ready on the table. Just really traditional family values, I should say. That's how it is in the rural areas of Peru as well. But when you switch over to a more urban area, such as Lima, actually, the tables kind of turn a little bit, and women actually are seeking more salaried jobs outside of the house. And there's also a really high percentage of single mothers, and so these women are the sole breadwinners for their family, and so they are forced to kind of take on both mother and father role, and like I said earlier, bring in um, the revenue for the family. Yeah, so women are definitely a lot more empowered in the urban areas of Peru, as opposed to the more traditional view of family in the rural areas. So, like the Andean regions where more of the indigenous people live. Um, Language is also kind of a barrier at times in Peru. There are three nationally recognized languages, and those are Spanish, which is by far the most popular, Quechua, and then Aymara, and those two are native languages to the indigenous people. Quechua is the language that the Incan Empire, the Incas, they spoke, and that's a majorly that's one mostly spoken language. There's only one type of way to like write it down to communicate, and that is almost an extinct way of using this language. But something interesting to see is that the higher you or starting at the top of the social classes, Spanish is most widely used in between the middle and upper class, and then the mid to lower class use the indigenous languages, so the Aymara and the Quechua, and these are kind of dividing factors. The Peruvian government is trying really hard to bring back and preserve the use of Aymara and Quechua. Aymara especially because that's decreasing at a faster rate than Quechua is, but um, they Quechua was originally oppressed by the Peruvian government for some 30 years just because of it wasn't seen as prestigious like Spanish was. And so those can sometimes be a dividing factor between the people. But as far as the workplace goes, the Peruvian society in the workplace puts a lot of emphasis on being punctual. And so tardiness is not accepted at all. There's some pretty harsh consequences for being tardy in the workplace. They're fairly informal with their coworkers. They call each other by their first names. But when they are in a more formal situation, they all communicate with their elders or the people above them in social class, or just in really formal situations, they use the formal usted, which is a way to show respect or just a decent greeting from person to person. So there's some similarities between the culture of the United States and the culture of Peru. So yeah, I really enjoyed um, doing this report just to see those cultural differentiations between here and there.